first tonight to the joy of the surprise hostage rescue, Penny Wong's silence over the matter, and the Al Jazeera journalist who was holding Jews captive, all while reporting on human rights abuses. On Saturday evening, we received the news that we thought it would be impossible not to celebrate: the rescue of Noah Agamani, just 25, Almog Meir, 21 years old, Andriy Kozlov, 27, and Shlomi Ziv, 40. Yet there has not been a word of joy or any welcoming the news from Penny Wong. For 8 long months, there'd been no news of these hostages, and there were grave fears for their lives. Who could ever forget Noah Agamani's face as she was ripped away from her life as she knew it and forced onto the back of a motorbike while her boyfriend was held at gunpoint? The 25-year-old screamed, "Don't kill me," as she was kidnapped. The scenes of Noah's devastated father crying went right around the world as he begged, as he cried, how he was devastated. He spoke about how he'd kept his daughter safe all of her life, and now she was gone. Well, thanks to the bravery of Israeli forces, Noah, Almog, Andriy and Shalom were reunited with their families. And here are some of those emotional moments.
Go there.
The trauma to these families has been indescribable. But where were 3 of these hostages hidden? In the home of a Palestinian journalist who'd written for Al Jazeera and the Palestine Chronicle. Here was Abdallah Al-Jamal's profile on Al Jazeera. In his articles, he regularly wrote about so-called Israeli human rights abuses and war crimes, claims of starvation and genocide. You wonder how the media get it so wrong. Well, perhaps it's because they're relying on first-hand accounts from Hamas terrorists masquerading as journalists, all the while holding Israelis hostage. Al-Jamal's home was in the Nuseirat refugee camp. That's where Hamas and Palestinian civilians were hiding these innocent hostages, inside a refugee camp. And the refugee camp has been run by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. So what responsibility does the aid agency have here? And why is Australia still sending millions of dollars to UNRWA? And why didn't the Red Cross, UNRWA or any other agency visit Noah and the other hostages, despite them being held captive inside a refugee camp? We've even seen in the past 2 days morally corrupt United Nations officials, like the biased Francesca Albanese, claim that the hostages were released. Well, that's utter rubbish. Instead, it took a high-risk operation by heroic Israeli special forces to free them. They were under constant gunfire as they went into civilian buildings to save the hostages, and under fire as they left. It was something like out of the Netflix television show Fauda. Media reports say that elite special forces blended easily with locals in Gaza, posing as displaced Gazans or Hamas fighters, entering the refugee camp in disguise and speaking the language fluently. One report, we can't verify it, but one report claimed they were driving a white car loaded with mattresses, and the women were dressed in clothes similar to Palestinians. The Times of Israel quoted a Saudi-owned news channel and said that according to the report, the special forces introduced themselves to local residents as Palestinians escaping the Israeli Defense Forces operation in Rafah, and said they'd rented a place in the area around the market in Nuseirat, while pointing at the building where hostage Noah Argamani was being held. The disguised forces reportedly got out of their car and split into two groups, each heading toward one of the two buildings in preparation for the operation. Ultimately, one father, a hero, Arnon Zamora, lost his life, and the operation to rescue the hostages has now been renamed Operation Arnon in his honour. He leaves behind a wife and two children. At the news of the hostage rescue on Saturday evening, there were celebrations across Israel and even in Australia. I thought it was strange that there was no statement or tweet from Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong celebrating the release of the hostages. It's a point the Daily Telegraph made on the weekend. How could she not even welcome the news? Well, 2 days on, Penny Wong still hasn't welcomed the news that 4 hostages, including a 25-year-old woman, were rescued. Instead, we've only heard from her media advisor, her spokesperson, saying, and I quote, "We want to see all hostages released, civilians protected, and parties agree to the ceasefire proposal presented by President Biden." And then today, Penny Wong released a statement saying she was sending Anne Ali, the first Muslim woman elected to federal parliament, to attend a conference on the crisis in Gaza. Again, in this press release today, no mention of the ongoing terrorism against Israel. And Penny Wong said, "This war must end. The human suffering in Gaza is unacceptable. Australia has been part of the international push for a ceasefire, for humanitarian aid to reach Gazans in desperate need, and for hostages to be released." And in the same press release, Anne Ali, a Labor MP, said, "The humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic. Over 1 million Palestinians are facing catastrophic levels of food insecurity, and around 1.7 million people have been displaced, many several times over. Humanitarian access remains grossly inadequate." No mention there of the need to destroy Hamas, the need to stop the terrorism against the Jews, or demand the immediate release of the hostages. I mean, when you look at it, it's actually quite shocking how we've ended up living under such an extreme anti-Israel government. I mean, how did we end up with a foreign minister who can't express any joy at the extraordinary rescue under constant gunfire of 4 hostages, including a woman whose image went viral for the way that she was brutally captured on October 7? Well, it's worth reminding Penny Wong that Hamas and the Palestinian civilians holding these hostages could have released them at any point over the past 8 months, but they chose not to. If Hamas freed all of the remaining 120 hostages right now and surrendered, the war would be over. There would be no crisis in Gaza or in Israel. It's curious, there's so little pressure by the Albanese government on Hamas to release the hostages and end the war. Instead, the pressure is overwhelmingly on Israel for daring to bring their innocent people home. The world's youngest hostage, baby Kafir, was taken when he was 9 months old, along with his 4-year-old brother Ariel. They vanished into the depths of Gaza. Yet, given what we've just seen with the case of Noah Argamani and the others, there will be Palestinian families and possibly aid workers and possibly journalists who know where they and the other hostages are. We cannot rest, we cannot give up until baby Kafir and his beautiful family are brought home. To give up on all of these innocent families would be like leaving 120 people in a concentration camp. No one would dare suggest such a thing. And no one should dare suggest that we leave behind hostages now. Now, Penny Wong, who has visited Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Israel, should think twice before demanding of Israel an immediate ceasefire until all our hostages are home safe.